All right, so let's talk about Chrono Odyssey. Is this going to be the next big MMO? Maybe, or maybe not. It's still a little too soon to tell, but it's been gaining some traction here recently, and it should be releasing later this year, probably like around October, November, December range, with the closed beta happening here in June. So yeah, we're getting close, but I've been keeping an eye on this game now for, gosh, I think a couple years, and we don't really know too much about the game. However, the developers just dropped a video describing the game in a little bit more detail. I think they dropped it like this past Thursday. So we'll kind of take a look at what they said. I'll give my thoughts on it, and then we'll also take a look at a post on Reddit that goes into some more details as well. So there's a lot to talk about. So let's jump into this video. So I'll say right off the bat, the biggest takeaway is that the game is giving me New World vibes, like New World 2.0, especially how the world looks, how the combat looks, which I don't mind New World, right? The combat is a little bit slower to my liking, especially when you compare it to BDO, but I think overall, most people, including me, will enjoy the combat. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and actually experience it and see how it feels. But at least it's not tab targeting, because if it was tab targeting, I probably wouldn't even play it. But yeah, it looks like with the combat, you know, you're gonna have the ability to do like dodging and the ability to parry. So, you know, you're gonna rely a little bit more on skill than just gear, and that's a good thing. They did mention that the combat will be focused more around like weapon swapping, you know, which is kind of similar to like ESO, Throne and Liberty, BDO, New World. So, you know, I like having the variety of weapons and being able to swap during combat, right? It just makes it more engaging. Another big takeaway that they mentioned, actually pretty frequently throughout the video, is how they want their players to have the freedom to progress your character however you want, right? Either it be solo content or group content, right? And I love that, right? I like that freedom. You know, if I want to do solo content one day and then maybe do like group content another day, I can still do that, and I can still progress my character, which is definitely my type of play style. Also, if you want to strictly, you know, do life skills and craft, then that's a valid way of getting to in-game. Or if you want to just strictly do combat, then that's also a valid way of getting to in-game. And I think that's massive, because it's not like a linear, boring path that everyone's going to be taking, right? So you have that freedom to kind of do whatever you want. They also mentioned that, you know, there really isn't going to be like this traditional MMO questing path, but more kind of on exploration of the world, finding secrets to like develop the story, right? So everyone's going to be exploring the world at different stages throughout the game, which they mentioned that their unique time mechanic would play a role in being able to find these kind of unique and different exploration paths. And they did say, you know, the game is not going to have any loading screens while you're exploring, which will be nice for kind of that immersion and exploration of the map. And let me say, the world looks stunning, and it looks like there's going to be many different biomes to explore, and even the monsters just look very interesting, almost kind of like an alien vibe to it, right? But I'm telling you, it's just like very New World-esque vibes, especially with the world. They did mention briefly that Chrono will have, so that they were talking about like the content that's going to have like trials, labyrinths, and then like field bosses, which I guess maybe is like world bosses. And you know, I'm sure we'll get even more content announced as the game gets closer to being released. Another kind of important aspect of this game is that there's going to be PvP. So that was confirmed. We don't really know exactly how the systems are going to be like for PvP, but they did mention it's going to be based around like PvEVP, which I'm definitely down for, but we don't know, you know, if that's going to be like an instance game mode, or if it's going to be open world. I really hope it's going to be open world. I think another important component that they spoke about was the game being based around like smaller content, with most of the content being enjoyed by like a 5-person party. So, they didn't really talk about like big raids or, anything into that extent other than like the fill bosses. So we'll have to kind of wait and see with that. But yeah, we'll have to see if raids might make it into the game at a later day. I think another aspect that I liked is that they mentioned that the game will be kind of focused on hybrid classes rather than like a complete Holy Trinity system, which in my opinion, I can't really stand a Holy Trinity system because you have to rely on other people. And, when I want to do solo content, then I can, right? Or if I want to do group content, then I can. So I personally like that direction. However, it does seem like there are going to be still like healers and tanks in the game, but the healers and the tanks are going to have the ability to progress solo, right? So that's really, really good. So yeah, pretty hype video, honestly. And you should definitely go check that full video out on YouTube. But let's take a look here at this Reddit post because it has some pretty interesting details. All right, so here's the post. So grab you a cup of coffee, kind of relax, and we'll go through this. So more details on the systems of Chrono Odyssey. Hello, I've compiled even more information regarding Chrono, inspired by this post, which goes into some information as well. Here's another post, I guess. Most of the info below comes from various sources, including Xpost, Steam pages, screenshots, video footage, and the dev video. Be mindful, I'm not under NDA. I did not participate in the alpha. All of this information I gathered on my own from public statements and sources. These systems are all subject to change or hopefully be improved by launch. Yeah, I think that's important to note here, is that I guess maybe the things that they are about to explain may or may not make it into the game. Okay. So all of this is subjective to change, and who knows if even all of this is even correct. Gear progression and enhancement, equipment score. Gear has an equipment score that increases with upgrades. Upgrade limits. Gear can be upgraded a fixed number of times, 0 to 15. 5 tiers of gear seen so far. Materials required for crafting. Upgrading requires gold and specific materials. There is trading and seems to be gold caps around 1 million gold. Caps might not just be for the playtest though. System style, just speaking purely on the enhancement system, it's described to be similar to vanilla ArcAge, straightforward upgrading with no RNG breaking, fails, or pity systems like BDO or Lost Ark. There is none of that here for gear enhancements. Wait, that's kind of crazy if that's true. Wait, really? Wow. That's kind of insane. That I don't know if I believe that. No RNG breaking, fails, or pity systems? That is really hard to believe, especially for a Korean developed game. I don't know. We'll have to see with that. I mean, if that's true, that's pretty big. Stat examples includes physical defense, magic defense, critical resistance, and PvP specific stats. There are class skills that can be leveled associated to gear enhancement and is heavily implied to have synergy with your class skill tree. There are other stats like intellect seen on screenshots. Okay, so I mean just normal stats. Some PvE content that I wanted to clarify. There is much more than this, just clarifying a few of them. Please see the posted link earlier for basic information. Chrono gates, solo 1v1 boss fights found throughout the world. That sounds pretty cool. I like that. Co-op dungeons, expeditions, tactical group content with 3 to 5 player expeditions. More PvE content is expected beyond expeditions. There is also filled bosses. Yeah, I would assume that they're going to have more PvE content than just these expeditions. So I'm sure they'll give us more details maybe once the game gets closer to launch, or maybe even after launch. But yeah, I mean, those sound pretty cool. PvEVP content. We will get more clarity on this soon. I'm assuming between June 6th through the 9th. Yeah, probably once the beta happens. The PvP is centered around the PvEVP design, aims to offer a distinct experience where players compete for the PvE resources, not based on a standard siege or arena formats. Open world PvP flagging. Players can flag for PvP. Yes! Described as similar to World of Warcraft. However, it is highly likely to be more open world or zone or content based. But there is a flag based PvP system described as being similar to World of Warcraft for the time being. Player name color changes indicate PvP status in some areas of the dev video. Yeah, that would be really cool. We'll have to see how they implement this. There's so many people who have mixed feelings about open world PvP. I really enjoy it. I think it brings very unique content to the game, right? It's not, again, that boring linear path of you do this, you do that, and everyone does it the same way. When you have an open world PvP system, you're always kind of on edge. You have like unique experiences, but I can understand too the whole griefing aspect. So we'll have to see how they balance that. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get some more information once the beta drops. This one I'm kind of excited for. Bounty hunting. Highly likely to be the PvEVP. And that's true. They could be. Yeah, they could have this bounty hunting system tied to this like player versus PvE content. And yeah, I think that would be really, really unique, really fun. Track down powerful bosses and compete with other players for valuable drops. Described as goal-oriented content. The system is strongly suggested to be a major form of PvEVP. I am getting tired of saying that. Where players may become flagged for PvP under certain conditions. Notably, bounty quests are the only ones shown in red font so far. Oh, that's interesting. There is speculation this means that PvP conditions can take place. During closed alpha testing results shared on the Steam page, this was reportedly the most played content by participants. Who would have figured? People like PvP? Really? No, I think this sounds really interesting. It sounds like it's going to be pretty unique and fun, and it's gonna allow that variety of content to happen, right? Especially when you have the PvP in it. It's not going to be the same for everybody. It's going to be a different experience for each person because of the PvP. So I like that. It's kind of cool. And I wonder, like, with this bounty hunter type system, and you're going to go, probably fight this single boss, kind of makes me wonder if it's going to be like Monster Hunter in a way. So pretty cool. I'm excited to kind of see how that's going to be. More PvP systems to come or be revealed. The game is PvE focused, but PvP will continue to exist in meaningful ways, and there are multiple forms of PvP content suggested. This is just what I've gathered so far. Yeah, I'm sure they'll continue to expand on this. I mean, they might not have like arenas or battlegrounds at this moment, but it might be something that they add in the future, right? I mean, gosh, look at BDO. BDO didn't get arena style of PvP until like what, 6 years later into the game? Crazy. Progression and systems. Player-driven progression where the main story quest and questing in general is not mandatory to progress. Thank you, bro. Thank you. That's like the most annoying aspect, like with Final Fantasy 14. Like, why do you have to buy? Like, this should tell you something. That, you have to buy a story skip in order to get to end game for Final Fantasy 14 if you don't want to play the hundreds of hours of the story quest line, the main story quest line. And a lot of people do that. So that should tell you something, right? It should be more around like, hey, you have this amazing, awesome story, right? And if you want to do it, you can, but you can do it whenever you want to. Like, it should not be mandatory in order to progress your character. So that's awesome. Offers freedom to level via your preferred gameplay style. You can lie skill to max level without engaging in combat if you wanted to. Crafting, players craft weapons, armor, and items via workbenches. Materials must be gathered, wood, ingots, systems compared to New World and Vanilla Arcade. Yeah, I'm telling you, this game is very, very, very New World-esque. Gathering is a major progression path tied to crafting and the Chrono Tector, time travel-based system. Includes fishing, logging, butchery, gathering with a sickle, and other life skills. So that's cool. I mean, that's going to be great, especially for people who like life skills. Open world and exploration, seamless world with no loading screens. Awesome. Emphasizes on immersive exploration, fishing, gathering, hunting, exploring the labyrinths, time portals, and trials. Large shared servers support a massive population. This is a true MMO, not an MMO light. The world evolves with player activity, unlocking new areas as exploration progresses. Pretty cool. I like that. Combat and system described as Souls-like combat. Features include iframe dodges, parrying, staggering, and stamina management. There's also lock on shown briefly in the dev video. Highly unlikely to be able to lock on during PvP. You would be surprised because New World has that. At least when I played a few months ago, they had a locking on system for like the controller players, and for PC players. Oh gosh, it was very overpowered. Described as easy to learn, hard to master. I like that. High skill ceiling, timing, and precision matter. All important. Soft Holy Trinity and build diversity. This game has 6 classes so far, with more to come. Each class has 3 weapons, but it seems the player has to choose to spec swap between 2 weapons and their respective skill trees. There are healer and tank play styles where hybrid builds are also supported. Healers and tanks can participate in solo combat effectively. Encourages flexible roles without sacrificing group utility. Yeah, I think that's all important. And that's cool. And a lot of people do like the whole, Holy Trinity system. So that at least allows those players to still be able to participate that, but also be able to progress their character independently from that as well. So that's good. Solo friendly group encouraged. Players can play solo or in small parties. The game encourages shared exploration while still allowing solo content. I think that's so important, right? I know it's an MMO, right? MMOs are designed to be this big world of playing with people. However, I feel like an MMO has to have a good blend between the two, right? It's got to have a good amount of solo content and it's got to have a good amount of group content. And based on that person's play style, they can kind of choose how they want to progress their character, right? Because one week, maybe you're super busy with in real life stuff, right? And you can't actually meet up with your friends to play the game, but you still want to progress your character in a meaningful way. And you still can do that by playing solo kind of at your own time. So I think that's so important to have that in a MMO. Like, it can't just strictly be just group based, and or it can't be just strictly solo based either. Designed for smaller scale groups and content, 3v3, 5v5 seen so far, but still supports a large open MMO world. What we know so far regarding monetization model. Buy to play model, no subscription, will have paid expansions. Cash shop, cosmetics, economy, and trading confirmed to exist, yet to be discussed. Yeah, I'm not gonna look at all the comments, but I mean, there's a lot of information's coming out. I mean, it seems like all really positive aspects, and so that's good. That's really good. So, we still don't really know the exact pay to win situation and how severe it will be. It is Kakao that's publishing the game, right? Which, if you're not aware, they published Black Desert Online way back in the day, and they specifically stated the game was not going to be pay to win. Well, what happened after 6 months to a year into the game? Pay to win elements were introduced. So Kakao does not really have the greatest track record with that. Also, in terms of like gearing and progression, you know, we don't know how that's really going to be handled. For me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of having your current progress completely wiped when a new expansion comes out, because all of the hard work that you put into it just goes right out the door as soon as a new expansion drops. I personally like BDO's progression path because your gear stays a lot more relevant at a longer time frame. But you know, that's just me. The bounty hunt system sounds really interesting, right? Sounds like it might be kind of like a monster hunter kind of system in a way, and you know, you kind of take down that specific monster. Hopefully there are some like interesting mechanics and can be done either like solo or party, and kind of like the post mentioned, maybe tie in PvP somehow. I think that would be really cool. So combat being described as Souls-like, kind of like New World. And I mean, if it ends up feeling like weighty and reactive, then it could definitely be popular. But a game's combat can really make it or break it. And let's be real, combat is hard to get right in MMOs, especially when you're mixing, you know, large scale PvP, world bosses, raids, and so on, right? The more systems you kind of layer in, the animations, the netcode, the class balance, right? It just becomes more difficult to have a really good and smooth experience. So, you know, while the vision sounds pretty good, I'm not trying to set my expectations too high with this. And if this ends up playing kind of like a clunky and unresponsive mess, then I probably won't be able to get into the game, because combat for me is everything, especially when you play BDO. So yeah, that all sounds pretty good. This is probably a hot take, but I do hope there are some grinding areas where if you want to go and kill mobs endlessly out in the open world, you could do that and still make some meaningful progress with your character, but it doesn't necessarily have to be required. Just something that could be added in addition to the current content. But I guess that's just my inner BDO coming out of me. But yeah, Chrono Odyssey looks like it can be a really good and amazing MMO. Like I'm really interested in the game. I think for me though, the combat has to feel good, and it also has to give me a solid reason to want to progress my character. So I'm cautiously hyped, right? There's a lot that sounds really good here. We just got to see if they actually deliver on it. But let me know down in the comments kind of what you think. Is there anything particular that you're interested in? But as always, thanks for watching. You are awesome, and I hope you have a great week. Peace.
Sunsets on black desert sky. It's just you and I.